Good day and welcome to another edition of the RDFNL Footy Show, a special edition here. We're having a mid-season review, part one. My name's Yeendy. I'm here with Tara Murray from the Star Weekly. As we said earlier on in the week, Tara, we're going to use your expert analysis to go through about some of what's happening with some of the teams heading into the break, and then obviously we'll be looking at them after the break.
It is, and it'll be quite interesting to see how they're shaped up. I know a lot of teams had high hopes going into the season. We see who has lived up to them and who hasn't.
Yeah, I think there'll be a few surprises there, particularly statistically. In this edition of the show, we're going to look at Broadford, Diggers Rest, Lancefield, Macedon, Melton Centrals and Riddell. And the first team we're going to have a look at is Broadford. And no surprises with what went on in the off-season, sitting at the bottom of the ladder. How have you assessed their season to date?
Well, they're probably what we sort of expected. They were going to be at the bottom of the ladder. They've struggled for players, seniors and reserves. They didn't get their 18s on the board either. So for Broadford, it was about getting a team on the park. They've managed to do that. At times they've been competitive. You look against Lancefield, was probably their best game. They were in that for 3 quarters and then ran out of legs. So that's probably the thing they don't have. They don't have that strength to play 4 full quarters. So there has been a couple of blowouts, and the last weekend was probably really disappointing to lose to Wood End in the manner they did. 186 points. Never want to lose like that. But for Broadford, it's just about continuing to improve each week.
Looking at some of the stats so far this year, they've won 3 quarters overall, the first, second and the final quarter to rate 12th in the competition. They've averaged 41 points to rank 12th and concede an averaged 150 points against to be first in that area. Brent Littlewood is the leading goal kicker. He's kicked 8. I think he kicked 4 in one game as well. That might have been against Melton Centrals. So but no surprises there for them. They just lack that goal-scoring power up forward, and defensive-wise, still a little bit of work to do.
I think they lack players across the ground, but we always knew that. So
and they know that too.
They know that too, and I think it's about developing some of those young guys who may have been playing 18s. They don't have 18s, so they are playing seniors and getting those opportunities. Looking
at the other end of the ladder, sitting in 6 and 1, the reigning defending premiers, Diggers Rest, who have won a total of 21 quarters this year to rank 2nd overall. Their best quarter efforts of the year has been the third term, where they've won 6. So it goes to show they come out after half time and they focused on what they need to do.
Is it possible Diggers Rest, the reigning premiers, are going under the radar at this point of time?
Well, it's an interesting one because since the loss to Romsey a few weeks ago, they have won their past 12 quarters in a row. They could be trying to push up now. But
you look the last 3 weeks they've played Melton Centrals, Rockbank and Lancefield. So I know they weren't happy after that game, and they've really worked hard on their work ethic. That was one of the biggest things to come out of that Romsey game, and they're building. They set themselves for that 4-game period after that loss. They've really stood out. They've really stood up. They've got a lot of new players coming into the side. It's not the premiership side they had last year. So for them to be 6 and 1, I think Melton Centrals was their best game of the year. Obviously Lancefield was a really good game as well. They're building, and for them it comes later in the year. They know what they're doing. They know what they have to do. And to be 6 and 1, and not many people are talking about them, so I reckon they are actually under the radar.
Yeah, well, and I don't think they've faced too many teams inside the top 6 as well. I think the Sunbury Kangaroos was a big win that they had, and so their hardest games are still to come. They average 107 points per game this season to rank 3rd overall, and have conceded the second fewest points overall at 39. Interesting stat though is that their leading goal kicker is Matt Krull, and that is ranked. Well, he's got 13, but that is ranked 11th overall in the competition.
Probably not surprised. It's a brand new forward line. Matt Krull, we've all known him for his defensive work and pinch hitting the ruck. So he's had to move forward, and that is a different role for him, and he's really taken to that. So Diggers Rest forward line was one area that was going to take a while to get going. I know you've got BJ Kelsey, Mick Kelsey are a couple of them who can kick goals. So they are trying to find that right option and get that forward line right. Speaking to Sean Sims a few weeks ago, he said that's not going to come right until towards the end of the season. So they're building with that, but they're still averaging the 3rd most points in the competition. You can't complain with that.
Which is impressive. They do lose a bit of goal scoring power there with BJ doing a knee injury as well after coming back from holiday and getting injured after a couple of games. So watch with his interest with the progress he gets back on the field. Next team we're going to look at is Lancefield. They have won 7 quarters this year to rank 10th in the competition. Their best quarters so far this year have been the final term, so they finished strongly. They've won 3 out of 7. averaged 50 points a game at 11th overall and conceded 97 points to be the third most in this area. But an interesting stat is John Kent has kicked 23 goals for the season. I think he ranks second or third in the comp, and that's considering their average scores. That's almost 50% of what they kicked this year.
Well, it's no surprise to see John Kent being their leading goals kicker and kicking a big bulk of their goals. He's done it the last couple of years. But Tigers, I think they'll be disappointed with how they've gone. There's been really only 2 games they've been really in it to the end. You had the Woodend game, which they lost in a close one in round 1, and they ended up coming from behind to beat Broadford. But I think it was always going to be tough. They've had a change of coach as well after 2 rounds. So it has been disappointing, and they have gone backwards from where they were the last couple of years when they've only just missed out on finals.
And they've still got some good talent on that list as well. But again, you could have a good 12 players, but then it's what you've got coming up underneath you. And that's still building games in some of those guys.
It is, and I think for them it's about building the fitness. They didn't have many on the track pre-season. You lose Cam White, who has got AFL experience. He has taken on the coaching role, but he did his ACL in round 1, so that's a big loss as well. You don't get guys of his size coming in every day. So for the Tigers, they just have to keep building. They know it's going to be a tough season, but it's about playing 4 consistent quarters of football every week, and a few more wins will come.
Look out for James Worcester as a smoky to potentially join John Kent in the team of the year as well. He's had a good season, James, and I think he's kicked a bag of 4 already this year, so he's looking good. Yeah, the 4th team we're going to look at for this part of the show is the team that everyone's talking about. It's Macedon. And on top of the ladder, undefeated. They have won 25 of 28 quarters, and the quarter that's let them down is the second quarter. Traditionally slow starters, winning all 7 quarters, but it's how they've done it. The exciting stat is they've kicked 33-25, 223 to 210-22 to win by 201 points in first quarters alone this year. We haven't seen anything like that in this competition in a long time.
I know, and I spoke to Jeff Andrews a few weeks ago about these first quarters. He goes, we haven't done anything different. Nothing's changed. We're doing the same thing. And there's only been one real first quarter they've been tested, and that was against Riddell, a game both you and I were at.
Yep.
But then they kicked 12 goals in the last quarter. So different game, but all of that. So Macedon, I think, they've done everything that's asked of them. They've played a lot of teams in that top 6 as well. So they have played Rupertswood, they have played Wallen, they have played Romsey. So then it's not just wins against all these lower sides. They are getting really comprehensive wins against some of those sides that will play finals.
I find it quite fitting as well. They've conceded 2 goals this year, but it has been to Broadford and Riddell games where they've won by over 100 points.
It is, even if they're not kicking goals, even if they're conceding a goal a quarter, you'd take that as a win every single week.
Yep. No surprises in the for and against. 115 points they've kicked this year to be ranked number 1 overall and conceded 6 goals a game, or 36 points, to be the best in that area. Jason Cook, leading goal kicker in the comp. He's leading goal kicker in the team, obviously, with 31. As we turn our attention to Melton Centrals, who have won 11 quarters for the year to be 8th overall, and have their best quarters have been the third quarters, which has been quite impressive.
It is. Melton Centrals have been one of those sides. You've sort of had the first few weeks, and then the next few weeks. On the weekend was against Wallen was slightly better. The first 3 weeks they got 3 really good wins against sides that are down the bottom of the ladder. Now they've played those top sides, they haven't been able to match it with them. They've been blown out of the park, so they'd be quite disappointing that they're not even matching it. If they're competitive for a half, 3 quarters, you go, yep, we're really improving, but they haven't been. Wallen was slightly better. They were still 20 points down at 3-quarter time. They did get blown away in the last, but that is a sign of improvement. So you'd be happy with the first part, probably a little bit disappointed where they are, but they are a side that is developing, and I don't think we're expecting to play finals. They've got a first-year coach at the club. They've brought in a few players, so it's up and up for them.
Absolutely. Fingers crossed things go well for them in the second half of the season. Mick Egan, he leads their goal kicking with 20. They've conceded 89 points to be the 4th, the 9th overall in the competition, and ranked 8th overall for goals with 67. Interesting stat in the third term against Broadford, they kicked 10 goals, which is almost bigger than their average score for the year. As we turn our attention to Riddell, the reigning grand finalists, and they've had the year we've expected. I guess if we had the stat for who's blooded the most young stars this year, it'd have to be them.
It was, and it was always expected pre-season. They did actually blood a lot of young players the last couple of years as well.
True.
Last year they were going in with the youth policy. They ended up making a grand final. They've added a lot more young guys this year, so they have lost a lot of height, which has probably been the big thing that has really affected them. But saying that, they're sitting seventh. They have played quite a few of the top sides as well, so they get a few wins. You can't discount them from finals.
Won the last 2 games heading into the break. In terms of quarters, they have won 12th for the year, ranked 6th overall. Their best starts, or they finish strongly and they start strongly. They've won 4 and 4 in that department. They ranked 6th overall for goal kicking at 76 and conceded the ranked 5th for points conceding at 87. Hayden Ross, who was a midfielder, he leads their goal kicking with 11.
And I think that shows a lot for the Bombers. We said pre-season it was going to be hard for them to find goals. You lost Ben Said, who went back to Sunbury Lions and has been on fire up there. James Nolan has played a few games but hasn't kicked a lot of goals, and they lost Brian Ruffles. So that was your 3 leading goal kickers from last year. That's over 120 goals they had on the season. They were always going to have to find different avenues for goal. And when you've got a midfielder kicking the most goals, it's sort of saying they are struggling a little bit up that end.
They can still make finals?
I think they can. I always had pre-season that there was still a chance to play for. If they can get the wins they need, obviously they've got 3 the last couple of years to make finals. You've probably needed about the 8. And they do play a few of those lower sides on the run home, so they could get in. They could quite possibly sneak in. And you can never discount the Bombers come finals. They are a perennial finalists. So I think there is still that possibility. Well,
they had to play 4 finals last year to get the job done. Just lastly, a big congratulations to Big Ruff and his better half, Erica. They are tying the knot this weekend, and who knows, maybe a bit more encouragement. We might be able to see Ruff get the opportunity to maybe lace up the boots for a couple more games towards the end of the year and maybe guide the Bombers into the finals. We can only hope with a miracle run there. Tara, thanks so much for joining us on the first mid-season review episode of the RDFNL, where we dissected 6 teams, and we look forward to catching up with you after the break. Have a good long Queen's birthday weekend.
I was going to say, I'm working all weekend. There's still plenty of footy around, so while the RDFL's not on, I'll still be out at local footy.
Hopefully it's not too stressful for you. Get to put your feet up for a little bit. We look forward to catching up with you next week.
Thank you.